For the finale to the How to Train Your Dragon Trilogy, I can honestly say that this is the darkest chapter in the story. Literally, I couldn't see squat throughout this entire movie.
It didn't help that we had the 3D glasses.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into that. I know a lot of people out there are like, 3D is always terrible in films. No, it's not. The How to Train Your Dragon films actually have good 3D. Mm-hmm. The 3D in the How to Train Your Dragon films actually have been really good. I remember when I saw it the first time, that was the movie that made me go, oh, 3D actually can work in these films. It does feel like you're flying around. It was still really fun in the second one when you got all those dragons flying out of there. It felt great watching that. But in this one, because it's going for a darker tone.
And because a lot of the scenes happen at night or like in the caves and stuff.
Well, that's exactly why they're going for a darker tone. There's like, okay, well, we're not gonna like get like, you know, DC Cinematic Universe on this thing and like make everything grayscale. No, we're going to have it happen at night. We're going to have it happen at dusk. A lot of these scenes happen in the dark. And because 3D glasses dim down the color of whatever you're watching, man, about 30% of this movie, I had to squint and go, what is that thing? What's that over there in the corner? Over there. On that, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if I can give any advice on this one, it's that even if you were a fan of the 3D in the first two films, don't see it in 3D on this one. Because there are big, bright, beautiful moments in here, and I had to like take my glasses off for a second and just go, I gotta soak in the colors for a second. Okay, back to this. But yeah, for anybody who has never heard us talk about the How to Train Your Dragon films before, we both really love the first one. Second one, really like, but I had some problems with it. It's one of those films that when I came out of it, I was saying, this movie is excellent. It's a perfect sequel to that first one. But the more time goes along, the more I start thinking like, oh yeah, that's kind of a problem. Oh yeah, that wasn't done very well. Oh, poke a little hole in this thing. And oddly enough, this film actually answers a lot of the problems I had with the second film. It's almost like they were aware that they were problems. Mm-hmm. Because one of the problems I had is that I really like all of Hiccup's friends in the first one. But it feels like they were kind of pushed to the side in the second one. Like they did not get enough screen time in the second one. And it felt like they really should have gotten way more screen time. They actually get a decent chunk of screen time in this one.
It's like I felt like in the second one they're more focused on the dragon characters than the human characters.
Absolutely.
Which makes sense considering the plot and everything.
Also, they had like two new characters to introduce in the last one. Hiccup's mom and some guy who I honestly forgot was in the last one. And there's moments where it feels like they forgot he was in this film too. So they had to introduce those guys in the last one. But my other problem is that I'm just going to go ahead and spoil something from How to Train Your Dragon 2 because you kind of need to know it going into this one. But in How to Train Your Dragon 2, his dad dies. Hiccup's dad dies. And they have the one moment which they're like, no, Dad. And then it immediately cuts to like a Viking funeral of them watching his ship go off into the distance. And then bam, back to action. Yeah, we're going to go and save all the dragons. And I get that they kind of had to race out there and save all the dragons. But it does feel like they just sweep that death right under the rug. Like, oh yeah, that's kind of a big thing that does need to be addressed. That is kind of the thing that you do need to talk about a little bit more, spend a little bit more time on. And it's really surprising to me that in this film, Hiccup's dad, Stoic, is already dead. And yet they get so much more in-depth about the relationship that Hiccup had with his dad.
Yeah, it's because of flashbacks and everything.
They only have 2 flashbacks, but they're really damn good flashbacks. And part of the story of this is that Hiccup, he's now the chief. He is now in charge of this entire village. He kind of has to think about what his dad would do and about what his dad left him.
Yes, and what his dad has taught him and everything.
Exactly. But there are moments in here in which you see like little baby Hiccup talking to his dad about dragons, and man, it makes you realize the relationship that they had, and it feels like it has a big weight to it. But another problem I had with the last one is that he meets his mom, and his mom, who they thought was dead, she had to abandon them so that she could go and protect all these dragons. And I understand, very good cause, but it does also kind of feel like that was a bit of a dick move to just leave your family behind. It's like, shouldn't you go and tell your family this is what you're going to do? Why couldn't you do that? I'm sure there was a reason, but it did really bother me. And in this one, there is a flashback in which you see little baby Hiccup going downstairs, and Stoic, his dad, has been just this big macho badass in the last couple films. And he comes downstairs after all the lights have been turned off, and you just see Stoic next to the fire, and he's just tearing up, and he's just crying. And it actually made me love that scene. because it was the scene that came in here and said, no, a mom leaving and faking her death so that she could go and do this other thing, but leaving her family to think that she's dead, it would have an impact on them. It would actually be, you know, a really emotional thing, and they actually took the time to acknowledge that, and I applaud this film for doing that. So this film actually did address a lot of the problems I have with the last one. But let's talk about what the actual plot of this thing is. Not just my problems with the second film. In this film, there are these dragon poachers. And they're rounding up all these dragons, but Hiccup and Toothless and their entire crew and their entire village, they've been going out there to rescue all these dragons that get kidnapped. And these poachers are getting fed up with it, so they hire this guy who was like the #1 dragon murderer.
Yeah, like he specializes in night furies.
Excuse me. Or he did when he thought they were still alive.
Yes.
He has apparently killed every night fury on the planet, except for one. And now that he knows that one still exists, he wants to go out there and get it. But here's my first kind of big confusion about this film, is that he is so obsessed with going out there and killing this Night Fury, but the bait he's going to use is a female Night Fury, and I couldn't help but look at that and go, wait, so you've got a big thing about wanting to kill all the Night Furies, and when he finds out that Toothless exists, there's one left, this can't be, I have to go and kill, like, he is just like salivating at the idea of killing it. But then he sees the female Night Fury there, and he's just like, oh, hey, female Night Fury. Anyway, that Night Fury, I must go out there and get...
But it's like the female, like, they called her, like, a Light Fury.
Hiccup and his friends called it that. That didn't make it the official name of it.
Yeah, but it's like she's obviously different from a regular Night Fury. Is like she's white instead of black,
but
and like several other things.
But that doesn't necessarily mean it's an entirely different species, and
maybe,
that's the problem, is that...
It's like, maybe it's like the Nidoran in Pokemon, like there's like...
But there's still Nidorans! That's my thing about this. He's not coming in here and saying, I must kill all the male Nidorans. No, he's just saying, I must kill all Nidorans. So it makes you go, okay, well, is that a female Nidoran over there? The people who don't play Pokemon have no idea what we're talking about. But it does make me look at this and go, okay, but
yeah, that's kind of confusing.
The fact that we're having this conversation is a fault of the film. But anyway, that's a whole, like, rabbit hole that we're not going to go down. This movie, it does raise a couple questions in here. So basically what happens is that this guy, he's now after this Night Fury, so he goes and he starts hunting their entire village. And Hiccup has to realize we've kind of made ourselves a target. We're the only people out here who are really accepting dragons. We're the only people out there who are really welcoming dragons. So our entire island is now overrun with dragons.
Yeah, it's like
so we just put a giant bullseye on ourselves.
Basically, Hiccup has become like the crazy old cat lady, but with dragons. He's like hoarding them.
It was almost more like birds because they actually built birdhouses for them.
Well, they do fly, so that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
the crazy old bird lady.
Yes. Far less common than the crazy cat lady, but they're out there. They're out there. You can be a crazy old anything lady out there. If it's an animal, someone out there is going to collect them. So he now realizes they have to find something to do with these dragons. And when he was a kid, his dad talked about how there were legends that at the end of the world, there was some giant waterfall, and inside there was the home of the dragons. It's where all the dragons originally came from. So Hiccup wants to set out there and try and find the place where all the dragons originated from. Why am I turning to you and explaining to you like you don't know this? To be telling the audience. So this film, it becomes them searching for this new world while there's hunters after them, but then there's also the element of there's a female Night Fury out there. And Toothless now finally has met one of his own kind, and he kind of has a thing for her. And now Hiccup has to kind of realize, oh, maybe I need to let my friend go and actually be with one of his own. I can't just keep him locked up here this entire time. And it becomes a question of, all right, when's the right time to let your friend go? And is it the right thing to let them go? And can you still be a part of their life? And it really is, for anybody who's ever had to, like, give up a pet, that's exactly what this film is trying to hit at. At the end of this movie, I'm not going to spoil what it is until we get to the actual spoiler part of our review, but yeah, there were a lot of people sniffling in that audience. There were a lot of tears that you could hear in that audience. So, okay, now we're getting into the really complex part of this review. Because everything I've described in here sounds pretty good, aside from the confusion about the female Night Fury in here. There's also a weird confusion about the fact that this villain, played by F. Murray Abrahams, who did a great job in here because I kept thinking he was Javier Bardem. If you can make me think you're Javier Bardem, you're doing a good job. This villain, he's got like these scorpion dragons, and they will not obey Toothless, which was another problem that I had with where the last one left off, because at the end of the last one, Toothless has become the alpha dragon.
Yes, the king of all dragons.
Mean all the other dragons have to obey him. And I kept thinking about in this film, okay, well, you could have a human be the villain, but how is a human going to stand up to all these dragons? They still need their own dragon, and how is the human going to have a dragon that Toothless won't be able to control? They do explain that he has these weird scorpion-like dragons who emit acid and toxins, and he poisons these dragons with their own toxins, so that way they're very obedient to him. And it did raise questions of, wait, so you can be poisoned by your own poison? It kind of raises a couple of questions. And what? How do you do that exactly? But it's dragon science. Dragons aren't real, so I don't know, sweep that under the rug as well. Don't think about that too much. They need an explanation for how he can have dragons that Toothless won't be able to control. They came up with an explanation for that. Fine, great. But aside from that question and the question about the female Night Fury, everything that I'm describing about this film sounds great. On paper, every single thing about this film really did work for me. But I just I did enjoy it. I did really like it. But I keep thinking about how I flat out loved the first one. And I keep thinking about how this one really is a solid story. And it addresses many of the problems I had with the second one. And I think that it hits a lot of emotional marks that I can relate to on many levels. And yet I just kind of liked it. It never went up to amazing for me. And the problem is, I don't really even know why. It's not like I can point to anything here and go, well, that wasn't all that good. No, that was really good. And I'm honestly wondering if it's just that in my head, the first one was so good that I've kind of built it up to a point where I won't be able to come back to it. Because, as I said, in the second one, I want to see more of these characters. The characters are great in here. You get a lot of time with Rough Nut and, Rough Nut and Tough Nut or something? Yeah, which, by the way, they did not bring T.J. Miller back for Tough Nut. T.J. Miller never needs to work again. Because the guy they got to cover for him in the here does 100% perfect T.J. Miller impersonation. It's weird, he actually gets more screen time in here as that character than T.J. Miller ever got in the previous two films as this character combined. So in a weird way, this new actor has taken over him, and I looked up this actor. He's really only done like this and a bunch of like background character. And I just kept thinking, dude, you now have a career. Because you know how many other characters T.J. Miller has voiced who are going to get like animated spin-offs or be in sequels? You kind of have your job now. You're good for a while. T.J. Miller paved a career path for you, and then he fucked it all up, and now you get to come in here with that ball after he fumbled it and just take it down and score a touchdown. I don't know why I needed so many metaphors in there. But yeah, I couldn't believe how good of an impersonation that was. I just had to come in here and applaud him on that.
So I think, going back to like why the third one didn't really do it.
Let's talk about the actual topic here at hand.
Yes. I think it's because it doesn't really have that wow factor. Because, like, yeah, you see the hidden world, and it's really nice and pretty, but
yeah, exactly.
You didn't really get to spend much time in it.
Also, like, in all honesty, I thought the island from the last film had an even bigger wow factor. I thought that was more impressive, which I don't remember if we've already talked about this, but one of the problems I do have with this film is that we have to find the hidden home of the dragons. You did! It's what you did in the last film. You literally already found the hidden home of the dragons. Well, no, but this is the hidden home of the dragons. Okay, fine, whatever.
Well, I guess it's like more like an island of dragons because, you know...
Yeah, it was the way that you described it to me after we got out of the theater was, in the last film it was a nest. This is like the origin home of them all. So I understand there is a difference, but speaking in terms of storytelling, it's a very similar story to the last one.
Yeah, it is, and I think that's another reason why it kind of like lost it on me.
Yeah.
It's like...
Okay, so it lost on you too. Okay.
No, it's like, I did enjoy it, but like, it did have a bit of a rehash feel to it.
Yeah, it kind of did feel like it's so weird that I enjoyed the first one so much. And even with my problems with the second one, I still enjoy the second one. But it's weird that as I was watching this, all I could think was, I'm glad this is the end of the trilogy because I don't need any more of these. I've kind of seen this. And I do have to applaud this film because without spoiling anything, it does end with a definitive, it's done.
Yes.
It ends with a, we are not coming back for a fourth one. We realize when is the perfect time to end an animated trilogy. Toy Story.
You never know. This could end up doing a Toy Story also.
They could come with some crazy ass out at the end of all. Who knows? Man, they do not need to do Toy Story 4. I'm sorry. I don't care how good the Toy Story franchise is. It's done. You had the perfect ending to that. Did I tell you my theory about what Toy Story 4 needs to be?
What?
Did you see that trailer that was Key and Peele and they were two animals like at the carnival? Toy Story 4 needs to be about the Buzz and Woody knockoff toys that they sell at a carnival.
Oh my god, I was just thinking.
And them having like an identity crisis of like learning that they're not the actual Buzz and Woody. That would be, man, I would give Pixar so many props for something like that. Anyway, back to this film. Yeah, I think that you nailed it. I think the wow factor is just gone. And it's not like this doesn't look pretty.
No.
It looks damn pretty. So the other ones. And I've kind of seen this stuff. And they never did anything in here that took me to like that next level. And it's not like the villain isn't good in here. The villain is good in here. There's lots of good villains out there. Man, that is like the most pompous, asshole-ish film critic thing to say. Like, I've seen other films that also have good villains in them. Yeah, it is. I realize what dickish thing I'm saying right there, but as good as this villain is, I kept thinking, am I going to really remember this villain in a couple years? Maybe not. As cool as the new dragons are in here, am I going to remember them in a couple years? Maybe.
It's like the scorpion dragons have a really cool design.
That's the only one that I could really think. That and the Hypnotoad one. Which there is one in here that is flat out Hypnotoad. It's this little squat dragon about this big, and it's got the Hypnotoad eyes. It was 100% inspired by that thing. And it just stands there the whole time just staring. That's all it does. It just stares. So I'll remember that one, but only because it's Hypnotoad. And again, they gave me more with the supporting characters. There's not really going to be anything that they did in here, though, that I'm going to remember them for. Like, none of them have major story developments, which would have been nice. They're all still just kind of here for jokes. The guy who was the new addition to the team that they had in the last film, he's barely in this thing at all. He is. I mean, every time he popped up, I went, "Oh shoot! Right, I forgot you were in this." Okay.
Like the only reason why he was there is like, "Oh, I know this dirt. It's from this evil guy."
Also, so that Jonah Hill could be jealous of him because he's so hunky. Like that was it. Also, I kind of feel like they wanted to hint at a possible relationship between him and
like Hiccup's mom, which is
No. The blacksmith.
Oh.
Because they have confirmed the blacksmith is gay, which they made a real brief thing about that in the last film, where he said, that's why I never got married because of this. And another reason. And that was it. And it made people saying, did you just say he was gay? And they came out and said, yes, he is in fact gay. And in this film, there is a moment in which he's complimenting like how buff this guy is. And he kind of gives him like this look. And I was like, did you have like more in here? Did you have like an actual storyline plan and then you chickened out at the end and you pulled it out here? Because if that's what happened, you kind of just left us with a character who's only there to just go, I'm still here. Hi, everyone. Like, that's kind of what he does in this film. It does feel like they had something planned for him because there are little moments that feels like they're setting something up and then that is it. There is nothing after that. And it does really reek to me of like, they kind of cut something out here. They kind of cut something. There's something on the editing room floor. So, yeah, it's a really solid film. On paper, it's great. But, yeah, there's nothing in this film that really amazed me. And that's the sad thing, is that there's not really any problems with this film.
No.
It's so bizarre to me that you have a movie that I'm not just, like, gushing over. But it's not because there's a problem that I can point to and say, well, this is the reason why it didn't do it for me. It's really just because the other ones had a bigger impact on me. And it's really sad because on paper, this one does really knock it out of the park. Paper only takes you so far.
Well, that being said, I think this is a very good final chapter in the trilogy.
An excellent final chapter.
Yes.
We have to come back to that. This is a great way to go out.
Yes.
I think that they really did feel like we have to wrap up everything. And they wrapped up everything. I was really impressed with how they took everything out in this film. So I'm going to give this film an 8.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I know you might be saying, well, it sounds like you were complaining a little bit more. How are you still giving it an 8? I'm only complaining because on paper this should be a 9 or even a 10. It's just, it did have that big magical wow feeling that the previous two did. So I can't really, push it any further than that. But yeah, I'm going to give it an 8.
Yeah.
So okay, let's go into spoiler time on this one. At the end of this film, they realize, hey, the poachers are going to keep coming for the dragons over and over. Mankind can't live with dragons just yet. So we're going to take Toothless and the Light Fury to the home of the dragons. And all the other dragons are going to follow them there. And they're basically going to live in this waterfall in the middle of the ocean that leads to this underground kingdom. And that's basically it. And that was the moment in which the entire audience, I heard multiple. And I couldn't blame them. But it's sad. I couldn't blame them for crying. But it's one of those things that I kept looking at that moment going, anybody who has ever had a pet that they lost or they had to give up, it's going to hit you so hard. I've had pets that I've lost. I've had pets I've had to give up. I was just sitting there like, well, that's sad. That's a shame. It didn't do it for me, sadly enough. And I think it is because, this movie it never got my emotions that high. But I can understand it doing that for other people because, again, on paper, I was looking at this and saying, that absolutely should be tearing up the entire audience. So, yeah, I thought that was a really emotional moment. But then they come back later on, and they now have kids.
Yes.
And Hiccup's got a beard, and he looks like a grown-ass man.
He's married now.
He's married now. And they are, petting Hiccup, and they see Hiccup, and Hiccup, I'm sorry.
Toothless.
They see Toothless. They see Toothless, and Toothless is all defensive, and he doesn't want strangers coming in there, but then Toothless recognizes him, and they start playing around, and then they take the kids up there, and they're flying around on their dragons.
Yes, and also, Toothless is a dad, too. He's got, baby dragons,
he's got little baby dragons, too. And he's ending with this speech, and this was the one moment that kind of did get an emotional reaction from me. Because the previous films, it always began with a speech, and it ended with a speech. And this one, it ended with the speech about how, oh, the dragons, they say they're legends. They say they never existed, but the people of Berk, we know, and we're here to make sure that they're kept safe until the day is right for man and dragons to live side by side again. That actually did get an impact for me because it kind of made this entire franchise come full circle. And again, I can look at this and say, all right, you have an out. Because you said, until the day when man and dragons live together, I can see a How to Train Your Dragon 4 where it's modern day and someone discovers the dragon portal and he has to make friends with an older Toothless because maybe dragons can live for centuries, who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe one of Toothless's offsprings.
Yeah. But it's or maybe old Toothless sees this kid and he's like, oh, you remind me of Hiccup. I can see an out. I can see a way to come back with How to Train Your Dragon 4, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like they had an ending and they stuck by it, and I really do have to respect them for that. Anything else in here to talk about?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think we kind of
covered it. Yeah.
But let us know your thoughts on How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World down below, and make sure that you come back tomorrow because we're going to do our entire Oscar rundown. It's going to be a big old video in which we are going to be covering all the categories. We're going to talk about all the movies that we didn't get a chance to review, give you our short opinions on those. So if you want to have some assistance in your office Oscar poll on Sunday, come back to us then. Bye, everyone.
Bye.